very warm afternoon to one and all present here, respected President Sir, and all the judges and my fellow colleagues and participants. Our topic of our today's discussion is stronger states make for a stronger nation. And this largely connotes to the idea of federalism. Now let us look at the time period of around the beginning of Second World War and during the depths of the Great Economic Depression, when the renowned political scientist Harold Lasky almost concluded that the time of federalism is over. And this was due to the large political spaces and large political organizations of that era were organizing themselves towards a more unitary and centralized exercise of power. And due to this, Lasky almost wrote the epitaph of federalism. But now let us compare this to the current time period which we are right now, where political scientists throughout the global scene have tried to tell us that federalism and judicial review are one of the strongest growing devices of constitutional making. And the structure of our constitution is also a federal constitution. So now let us try to understand how the origin and structure of our federal constitution has come about. And a very important aspect of this is the civilizational roots and the civilizational aspect which has helped us create and foster this federal identity of a nation. And the union of states, I quote, India is a union of states which have come together to form a nation to be able to work together for their betterment and for the betterment of their citizens. Now what is a state? A state is not just a simple geographical territory. It is a group of community, a community of people who have a distinct, I once again want to point out, who have a distinct ideological, cultural and sociological identities which lead on to very different things and a shared history, cuisine, culture, language and a lot of other things. And this constitutional phraseology which points out the union of states particularly helps us to understand the unique character of each and particular state and tells us about the need for its space and internal machinery to work in an organized system for the betterment of its citizens and for the people of the country. Now, while trying to understand how this process came about, we must try to understand the British colonial era, which had impacted a lot of our political and socio-political reasons. With the advent of the colonial rule and to the imperial eye, the diversity of a nation which was so diverse and pluralistic in nature, it appeared to them and to their power structures highly disorientative because of the exercise of power which they wanted to conduct towards our civilians and our citizen of people. And due to this imperial ideology and the colonialization of the mindset, we started to developing a Western nation state theories which was not till that time professed in the states of India. And we started developing that colonization of states of theory and the Western nation state theory with the advent of the dominance of the Western thought on the Indian academia or on the academic part of the subcontinent at large. And while we see that this transition comes about where we see the advent of the new nation state theory proposed by the West being accommodated into our socialization and our culture was due to the reason of the development of a nationalism and the emergence of nationalism and the development of nation state throughout the European continents at that particular time. Now, if we want to look at how this development affected the different aspects of federalism that pointed to our structure, we should move on to the aspects of the essential nature of federalism. The essential idea that of the federalism and one defining feature of Indian federalism is its diversity and plurality as compared to that Western nation state theory which has been imposed upon us. This is diversity, and we are diversity not just because we are surrounded by it. We are diverse because we encompass it in our consciousness and the self-awareness of being an Indian. We encompass this diversity and plurality. It is because we, not just as a nation, exist one. It is because this shared distinctive group of identities that we have in our nation, we celebrate them. And this cultural celebration of different diversities and identities is what makes India unique. And Rabindranath Tagore, while criticizing this nation state theory of the promulgated by the West, he emphasized his distrust towards this ideology and also tried to point us towards Indian nationalistic core principle, which helps us to celebrate our distinctive culture, and it doesn't hamper nationalism or doesn't try to falter with it. It tries to develop a sense of nationalism which is innate and very, very predominantly our own, very, very personal to us. And he also concluded that it is our India's gift and the solution in acknowledging the diversities of different faiths that we can give to the other nations as part of our academic and cultural development. And moving on, I would like to reiterate why this structure of Indian federalism in which we are entrapped is very, 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 very important for our existence and very, very important for the development of our nation. Because Indian federalism, just like the diversity of cultures, whereas offers a multiple outlook, the development and incitation of mutual trust and tolerance towards each other. It also helps one to inculcate a cosmopolitan outlook, and most importantly, it tries to bridge the differences between conflicting group of peoples and promotes one to understand and take an active seeking an interest in the understanding of other sides of ideology and the other spectrums of horizon, which tries to foster a stronger sense of nation together and develops a more stronger sense of nationalism in our country. And Mahatma Gandhi also emphasized on this local self-government and the rule for Panchayati Raj governments, and how the important self-governance at local levels and how our important structure of the constitution, which provides us with the 73 amendment with the Panchayati Raj system and local levels of government, helps us to facilitate this machinery and the well-oiled machinery of power in a more structured way. And we should remember that this emancipatory spirit which traveled through the freedom struggle and made its way into the constitution was not just merely because of these fundamental differences, but it was because of a collective spirit that the different identities and different ethnicities shared together, which fostered together and culminated in the constitution as a result. And while this constitution is the accommodation of all that ethnicities and diversities, we must also understand that the democracy, federalism, and diversity, these are the DNA of our constitution. And to impair and harm it with the viciously sectarian form of nationalism is to impede upon it a lower form of ideology. Thank you.
Thank you for your speech. You mentioned the fact that India is a diverse and pluralistic country. There's no doubt to that. But I would like you to acknowledge the fact that we have an inbuilt safeguard within our constitution in the form of Article 356, which allows the breakdown of state machinery as a ground for the union to somehow govern a state wherein they believe that the constitution is not being followed. Now, the founding fathers put in this very nuanced and new principle because of the fact that they were aware where a state takes on authoritarian tendencies, regardless of the autonomy it enjoys, it is against its own interest to be constitutional. And in that regard, I'll give you a very practical and human example of the United States. Ever since Roe versus Wade was struck down, we have had multiple states throughout the US promote draconian policies on abortion. I'll give you the example of the state of Alabama, and I want you to answer the question wherein you have a woman who has been molested, who's suffering and does not want the embryo that is inside her, and she cannot get medical care. Yeah. No, sir. Yes, sir.
If I can conclude, I think I understood what you're trying to portray. Firstly, let me just ask. Firstly, you wanted to point out towards the emergency provisions and how the center can take over states. And secondly, you wanted me to comment on the Roe v. Wade judgment and how the stronger states and make a stronger nation is inherent to that.
Just the ramifications of having strong states.
Yes. Now, can I answer? Yeah. Now, firstly, we must understand why is what is federalism and how does it come about. It is a system of governance made for people. So while you talk about the emergency provisions of Article 357, you must remember whenever there is an emergency, a lot of fundamental rights of humans are suspended. And the structure of federalist government that we embody, it is for the representation of our civilians, our citizens. And when that emergency is imparted, the basic right to vote is hampered and a lot of other fundamental rights have been taken away. So one should not argue that just because the emergency provisions are being provided in the constitution, that weakens the federal structure of our nation. The federal structure of our nation is for the embodiment of our citizens and their participatory form in the government. And secondly, the point where you commented on Roe v. Wade, what is beautiful about this point is in American federation and the federalism that America practices, the beauty of it is if a center tries to abolish a particular judgment or a particular decree or a particular precedent in a very unitary form, the states have the power to fight against it. So to convey a point, a woman who has been molested or is a victim of any crime, if she is in a particular state where the state has the power to fight and does not succumb to the demands of the center, it can and help them. Thank you. Thank you.